If you touch that Bible one more time, Elijah, you may find that its weight is greater than all the battles you have ever faced. This is the story of Elias Carter, a black American man, former military officer, patriot, and family man who finds his faith and principles tested amid life's dilemmas. A narrative of silence, tears, heartbreaking dialogue, and the voice of God that emerges when everything seems to be falling apart. Before we dive in, I invite you to subscribe, leave your comment, and walk with us chapter by chapter on this journey of faith and redemption. The silence of that Atlanta morning seemed to carry within it all the echoes of past battles. The cold air cut into the skin like invisible blades, while dew lay on the worn wooden porch railing, smelling of damp cedar. Elias Carter, a broad-shouldered man with a weary gaze, remained seated in a gently creaking rocking chair. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon, and the sky was a mosaic of deep blue and the shy orange of dawn. His strong hands, marked by calluses from years in the army, held a small, worn-cover Bible, an inheritance from his father, Reverend Joseph Carter. He opened it as if opening an old wound, his fingers tracing the yellowed margins, pausing on a penciled note. "Faith is stronger than steel, son." Elias closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The smell of wet earth mixed with fresh coffee from the kitchen seemed to carry a silent promise, but inside him, the questions were stronger than the answers. The Georgia wind, laden with the scent of wildflowers and distant chimney smoke, made Elias's brown leather jacket vibrate slightly, as if reminding him that the cold outside was nothing compared to the ice he carried in his chest. "God, how long?" he murmured in a deep voice, almost a whisper of despair. His dark eyes, deep as wells, stared at the horizon, as if searching for answers that never came. The creaking of the chair accompanied his slow breathing, and each beat of his heart seemed to synchronize with the memory of gunshots, war cries, and patriotic anthems he no longer knew if he believed. Suddenly, a creak at the door brought him back. The dry sound of wood opening announced the presence of Angela, his wife. She appeared wrapped in a simple blue dress, her hair hastily tied back, delicate glasses framing her attentive eyes. The scent of coffee accompanied her steps. "You're up early again, Elias?" she said, her voice firm but filled with restrained tenderness. He didn't respond immediately, only clutched the Bible tighter. Angela approached slowly, the floor creaking beneath her feet, and stood beside him, as if the silence were a barrier she dared not break without her permission. "I didn't sleep," Elias finally replied, his voice hoarse, marked by bouts of insomnia. "And it's not for lack of trying. This house, Angela, it's too quiet. Quiet enough to remind me of things I don't want to remember." Her eyes narrowed, searching for some remnant of the man she'd known at 20, strong and invincible. But now she saw before her someone who seemed to be fighting invisible enemies. "Elias," she said firmly, "your past cannot be your present. You're back, you're alive, your family needs you here." He turned his face to her, his gaze filled with a pain that words couldn't convey. "I served this country, Angela. I bled for this flag. I saw men die with the anthem on their lips, but when I returned, I found nothing but bills, closed doors, and a son who doesn't understand what it means to believe in something greater than himself." Angela took a deep breath, gripping his arm, feeling the stiffness of his tense muscles. "Elias, the faith you carry in this Bible isn't made of flags or battles, it's made of promises, and promises don't fail." The silence fell again, heavy, until it was broken by a voice from inside the house. "Dad?" It sounded hesitant, youthful, almost defiant. It was Michael, his 17-year-old son, the shadow of a generation that no longer held the same certainties as its parents. Elias took a deep breath, knowing the conversation about to begin would not be an easy one. Michael appeared in the doorway, wearing a black guitar-print t-shirt and ripped jeans, the headphones hanging around his neck, still leaking muffled rap music. His brown eyes, part reflection of his father, part rebellion of his own, stared at Elias like someone challenging a giant. "You talk so much about faith, Dad, but where was God when you lost your job?" The impact of the question cut the air like a knife. Angela swallowed hard, while Elias stood motionless for a few seconds, as if time itself had frozen. He stared at his son, and his heart seemed to pound against his chest with inhuman force. "Michael," he began slowly, each syllable heavy with gravity. "It's not God who abandons man, it's man who forgets to look at him." Michael crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe with a wry half-smile. "Maybe, Dad, or maybe God is just too quiet to make sense." The Bible trembled in Elijah's hands, as if it were the last thread holding him to reason. Angela watched, her eyes brimming with tears, fearing this moment would be the family's breaking point. The wind blew harder, causing the pages to open on their own to Isaiah, and Elijah's eyes fell on the words, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God." He looked up, now moist but steady, and answered his son in a voice that sounded like thunder in the morning silence. "Maybe God is silent, Michael, but even his silence speaks." Michael looked away for a moment, biting his lip, and the atmosphere became dense, electric, as if each breath were a spark about to set the entire house ablaze. Elias felt he needed to say more, needed to fight for his faith before his son's eyes, but as he opened his mouth, an unexpected sound shattered everything. The landline phone in the living room began to ring, shrill, insistent, like an omen. Elias stood motionless, the Bible still open, his gaze fixed on his son, his heart racing. Angela took a hesitant step toward the door. The phone rang incessantly, and in that instant, everyone sensed that the call was not just an ordinary morning detail, but something that would change the course of their lives. Who's calling? An answer, news, or a call from God? The insistent sound of the phone seemed louder than any siren Elias had ever heard on the battlefield. Angela quickened her pace, her blue dress flapping as she crossed the room lit only by the dim light of dawn. She answered, raising the receiver to her ear with trembling hands. "Hello?" Her voice was firm, but inside she felt her heart racing. On the other end, a heavy silence preceded a deep, masculine voice, charged with urgency. "Mrs. Carter? I need to speak to Elias. It's important. It's about his past." Angela froze, glancing at her husband still sitting on the porch. The wind seemed to hold the world's breath. "Who's speaking?" she asked. The voice only repeated, more firmly, "Put it through to Elias now." Angela covered the receiver and looked at Elias with wide eyes. "It's for you. They said it's about your past." Elias stood slowly, the rocking chair ceasing its creaking, and walked to the door like a soldier going to the front. He picked up the phone with a heavy hand, the Bible still in the other. "Carter speaking." A brief silence preceded the words on the other end. "Elias, this is Sergeant Collins. It's been years since we last spoke. I need you to listen to me. Something we left behind has returned, and it won't wait long." Elias closed his eyes for a moment, breathing heavily. Angela clasped her hands together, trying to contain her anxiety. "Collins?" Elias murmured. "I thought I'd never hear your voice again. What do you want with me after all this?" Collins's voice sounded even deeper. "It's not what I want. It's what you must face. You swore to protect more than a flag, Carter. Remember?" Elias clutched the phone tightly, staring out at the balcony as if the horizon were his foxhole. "I swore to serve, but my war is over. I have nothing more to offer." At that moment, Michael entered the room, half listening to the conversation. "Who is it, Dad?" he asked sarcastically. "Another ghost from your glorious past?" Elias turned suddenly, fury and pain in his eyes. "Shut up, Michael. You don't know what you're talking about." Michael gave a half-smile, but his eyes also shone with curiosity and fear. Collins continued on the other end. "Carter, listen. His name has resurfaced. The same man we swore to bury in silence. If he resurfaces, it won't stop with just you. It will affect your family." Elias felt the ground disappear from under his feet. "No, it can't be. He was dead. I saw it with my own eyes." Angela grabbed his arm, confused. "Who, Elias? What is this man talking about?" Michael approached, crossing his arms, insisting, "Speak up, Dad. You keep saying that God speaks even in silence. Well, I'm hearing only silence now. Who is he? Elias took a deep breath, as if each word were a grenade about to explode. Collins, if this is some kind of mistake, if you're messing with me, I swear— The voice on the other end interrupted. It's not a mistake. He knows where you are. And what's more, he knows who Angela, Michael, and Grace are. Carter, you can't run away this time. Elias trembled, looking at his daughter still sleeping in the room, innocent, unaware of the weight of those words. Angela, tears welling in her eyes, stared at her husband. Elias, tell me now, who is this man? A deathly silence hung in the room. The wind outside beat against the windows like war drums. Elias looked at Angela, then at Michael, and finally returned his gaze to the Bible, still open in his hand. His voice was low but firm, carrying something no one in the house had heard before. His name is Marcus Hale. Michael frowned in confusion. Angela brought her hand to her mouth, as if recognizing something hidden in her husband's past. Collins, still on the other end of the line, added in a somber voice, "And he does not come in peace." The phone fell from Elias's hand, hitting the hardwood floor with a sharp crack that echoed through the room. Angela took a step back. Michael froze, and Elias remained still as a statue. From the back of the room, the soft sound of Grace's voice singing a children's hymn broke the silence. Innocent, sweet, but now it sounded like an omen. Elias closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. Who is Marcus Hale, and why does his name threaten the Carter family? The room seemed to shrink around them. The phone still lay on the floor, like an abandoned body, and the distant sound of Grace's children's hymn echoed through the halls, creating a painful contrast to the weight of the revelation. Angela was the first to break the silence, her voice choked but firm. "Elias, you're going to tell me now, who is Marcus Hale?" Elias didn't answer immediately. His hands were still shaking, his eyes fixed on the open Bible on the table. Michael stepped forward, his tone thick with irony and anger. "Who is he, Dad? Another war hero? Another ghost you left behind?" Elias slowly raised his head, his gaze piercing his son like a blade. "He's no hero, Michael. He's the darkest memory of my life." Angela approached, her face contorted with pain. "It's not enough to speak in riddles, Elias. You have a family. We have a right to know who threatens our home." Elias took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and finally said, "Marcus Hale was my commander, a man who carried a Bible in one hand and a gun in the other. He taught me that faith could be used as a shield, but also as a weapon. But Hale crossed all limits. He didn't just fight enemies. He started fighting anyone who didn't think like him." Michael's eyes widened, surprised for the first time without sarcasm. "You mean he was a fanatic?" Elias nodded heavily. "More than that. He believed he was the very voice of God on earth." Angela ran a hand through her hair, trying to gather her thoughts. "But, Elias, you said he was dead. How can he come back now?" Elias walked to the window, looking out at the sky already lit by the rising sun, and replied, "I saw his body fall, Angela. I was there. We buried the past in that desert. But if Collins is saying he came back, then nothing we lived through is truly buried." Michael laughed, a nervous, disbelieving laugh. "So let me get this straight. This Hale guy was a madman, with a gun and a Bible, and now he knows where we live? Dad, that's insane. Why does there always have to be an enemy chasing you? Why can't we just be normal?" Elias's voice boomed through the room, firm as thunder. "Because I'm not normal, Michael. I was forged in battle. I carried men in my arms as they bled for the flag you despise. And now, if this man has returned, he won't rest until he destroys everything I love." Michael recoiled, the impact of his words piercing his pride. Angela, tears in her eyes, approached her husband and touched his face. "Elias, what if this battle isn't yours? What if God is showing you that you need to lay down the weapons of the past and trust only in him?" Elias looked at her with tenderness mixed with pain. "Angela, I don't know if I can. I don't know if my faith is strong enough after all I've lost." A heavy silence fell again. Michael, still leaning against the wall, spoke in a low but cutting voice. "So that's it? You keep saying that faith is greater than battles, but deep down you don't believe that, do you? You're afraid. Afraid to face a man. Afraid to face God." Elias turned suddenly, his eyes flashing with anger, but also with pain. "Watch your words, boy. You have no idea what I've faced." Michael didn't back down. "Then tell me. Stop hiding behind metaphors. Who really is Marcus Hale? What did he do that haunts you to this day?" Elias swallowed hard, the past burning in his throat. He approached his son, his voice low but grave. "Marcus Hale wasn't just my commander. He was my mentor. He was the man I trusted more than anyone else. And he was the one who taught me to kill in the name of faith." Angela took a step back, horrified. "My God!" Michael was speechless, his face paling. Elias took a deep breath, his eyes welling with tears, and added, "And he was also the one who tried to make me choose between the flag and the cross. I chose the cross, and for that he swore revenge." Just then, a dull sound came from outside the house. 3 loud knocks on the iron gate. Everyone froze. Angela clapped her hand over her mouth. Michael stared at his father in shock. Elias grabbed the Bible with one hand and clenched his fists with the other. The wind blew harder, making the door shudder. Who's knocking at the gate? An ordinary visitor, or a sign that Marcus Hale has already arrived? The 3 knocks echoed through the air like war drums. The iron gate vibrated, each impact resonating in Elias's chest like an inevitable call. Angela held her husband's hand tightly, her eyes wide, almost pleading silently. Michael took a step toward the window, trying to see who was outside, but all he could see was the shadow cast by the rising sunlight. "Father, who could it be?" His voice, for the first time, held no irony, but genuine fear. Elias took a deep breath, the Bible clutched tightly in his left hand, and replied gravely, "It doesn't matter who it is. We're about to find out if this war has already reached our door." The metallic sound of another knock made Angela flinch. "Elias, don't open it," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "If it's him, if it's this Hale, we can't just—" Elias interrupted her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Angela, if I don't open it, he'll find another way in. If it's Hale, or someone he sent, the worst thing we can do is show fear." Angela let out a tear but nodded reluctantly. Michael stepped closer, his eyes fixed on her father. "If you're going to open it, then I'll stand by you." Elias turned to him, surprised by the firmness in his tone. "Michael, no, this isn't your fight." The young man clenched his fists. "If this war threatens our home, then it's my fight too." Elias held his son's gaze for a few seconds, seeing in him not just rebellion, but the flame of a man in the making. Then he walked to the wooden door, each step echoing like a prelude to an irreversible decision. With steady hands, he turned the key and slowly opened it, the light flooding the room in a golden beam. Outside, it wasn't Marcus Hale, but a tall man in a civilian uniform, a fedora, and a hardened gaze. He held a crumpled envelope. "Mr. Carter," the firm voice said. Elias remained silent, analyzing every detail. The man held out the envelope. "Writ of appearance. The name Marcus Hale has appeared in federal investigations. You have been cited." Angela covered her mouth with her hand, stunned. Michael's eyes widened. Elias took the envelope slowly, his fingers trembling. "Who sent this?" he asked quietly. The man answered without hesitation. "The government. You've been summoned to testify. They believe Hale is not only alive, but may be operating on American soil." Elias closed his eyes for a moment as if receiving a war sentence. Angela moved closer, grabbing his arm. "Elias, this is a nightmare. You promised you'd left everything behind." He looked at her, his eyes welling. "Angela, I also promised to protect you, and if Hale is back, maybe I'm the only one who can stop him." Michael broke the silence, his voice thick with anger. "So that's it? The government calls you and you just go? What about us? Are you going to leave us alone? What if this man shows up here while you're gone?" Elias replied firmly, but also painfully, "It's not a choice, son. If I don't go, they'll come for us. And then there will be no gate to protect us. Michael clenched his fists, his eyes brimming with tears for the first time. You always talk about faith, Father. But so far, it seems you only have faith in your own strength. Elias took a deep breath, staring at his son, and said firmly, Don't be fooled, Michael. The only strength that keeps me standing is the hand of God. But even Jesus faced the desert, and this is my desert. The agent made to say goodbye, but before leaving he said somberly, Get ready, Carter. If Hale is truly back, he already knows you received this call. Elias closed the door slowly, clutching the envelope to his chest. Silence reigned again, heavy, suffocating. Angela threw herself onto the couch, tears flowing freely. Michael paced back and forth, anger consuming every gesture. Elias, motionless, seemed to carry in his hands not just an envelope, but the weight of the entire past. From the room, Grace's soft voice again emerged, singing the same hymn. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear. Elijah looked up, his eyes filled with tears, and whispered, Lord, how long? It was then that a distinctive knock, sharp and rapid, echoed at the living room window. 3 short, rhythmic taps, like a code. Michael froze. Angela jumped up in fright. Elias, shocked, recognized the sound. Who's knocking on the window? An ally? Or Hale himself sending his message? The 3 sharp knocks echoed through the room, like signals from a secret code. Elias stopped in the middle of the room, the envelope still in his hand, his heart racing. Angela took a step back, her face filled with fear. Michael stood still, his eyes wide, as if each sound could be the prelude to an invasion. Elias slowly raised his hand, signaling absolute silence. The family's breathing became the only sound besides the soft creaking of the house's wood. Again, 3 knocks, short, firm, deliberate. Elias murmured, almost voiceless, That signal. It can only be someone who knows me. With slow steps, Elias approached the window, his heart hammering in his chest as if he were back in the trenches. The thick curtain hid the figure outside, but the shadow indicated a tall man. Elias opened the window with a quick, firm movement, prepared for any surprise. Outside, a familiar face emerged from the shadows. Sergeant Collins, the same one who had called moments earlier. His gaze was hard, but held a hint of urgency and complicity. Carter, he said quietly, we can't talk on the phone. They're listening. Angela let out a sigh of relief, but then frowned. So, it was you who called? Collins nodded. Yes, ma'am, but I can't trust any secure line. Hale has eyes everywhere. Michael leaned closer, his tone thick with suspicion. And we're supposed to trust you? You show up out of nowhere, knock on our window like a scene from a movie, and expect us to believe you. Collins stared at him firmly. Boy, if they don't believe me, tomorrow they might not be here to doubt me. Elias held up his hand, interrupting. Collins, why didn't you tell me Hale was alive sooner? Collins took a deep breath, the weight of the secret written all over his face. Because until 2 weeks ago, we believed he was dead too. But trails have emerged, money movements, encrypted messages, and they all lead to the same name, Marcus Hale. He's not just alive, Elias. He's building something big. Elias clutched the Bible to his chest, his eyes welling up. I can't believe this man is still breathing. If this is true, then all hell is breaking loose on earth. Angela interjected, her voice thick with pain. And what does this mean for us? Collins, what exactly does Hale want from Elias? Collins looked at Angela seriously. He doesn't just want Elias. He wants to destroy everything Elias represents. Faith, family, and country. Hale believes Carter betrayed him when he chose the cross over the flag. And now, he'll want to prove to the world that Elias's faith is nothing but a sham. Michael slammed his fist on the table in disgust. This is crazy. You talk about this man as if he were a prophet of evil. But what if all this is paranoia? What if the government is just using you as a scapegoat, Dad? Elias turned slowly to his son, his eyes flashing. Make no mistake, Michael. Hale is no myth. He is flesh and blood, and when he knocks on our door you will understand that faith is the only weapon that can keep us standing." Collins approached, his voice low but firm. "Carter, you have a choice. You can ignore this summons and wait for Hale to come to you, or you can stand up now and face the storm head-on." Elias looked at Angela, tears streaming down her face. "What if I go and don't come back?" he asked. Angela held his hands tightly. "Then at least come back as the man of faith I knew, not as the soldier Hale tried to make." Elias closed his eyes, the words echoing in his soul. Michael once again approached, his voice trembling. "Father, what about us? What will become of us?" Elias took a deep breath and replied, "You are my reason for fighting. If Hale returns, it won't just be my war. It will be all our wars." Just then, the distant sound of an engine echoed down the street. Collins looked up, concerned. "They're here sooner than I thought." Elias frowned. "Who?" Collins replied tensely. "Hale's men. They're watching the house." Angela clapped her hand to her mouth in despair. Michael ran to the window, but Elias grabbed his arm. Outside, headlights swept the street. Collins slammed the curtain shut, turning to Elias. "We don't have much time." What will Elijah do when he realizes his house is already surrounded? The sound of idling engines outside echoed like silent thunder. The headlights cut through the already awakened dawn, casting beams of light through the gaps in the curtains. Angela held Grace in her arms, just awake, her childish voice asking in a startled voice, "Mommy, why are there cars outside?" Angela couldn't answer, just clutched her to her chest. Michael, his face pale, stared at Collins and Elias, as if finally understanding that this was all more than just war stories. "They're really here," he murmured in shock. Collins motioned for everyone to move away from the window, his hand already discreetly positioned on his gun holster. "Carter, we don't have much time. If they decide to break in, it won't just be intimidation, it'll be a message." Elias stood in the center of the room, the Bible in one hand, the envelope still in the other. His expression carried not only tension, but also the certainty that he needed to make a decision. "Collins, I'm not going to turn my home into a battlefield. My family has suffered enough." Michael exploded, his voice choked with a mixture of fear and anger. "So what are you going to do, Dad? Open the door and invite these guys for coffee? How long are you going to say you trust in God and continue to hide your own ghosts?" Elias turned to his son, his deep voice cutting like a blade. "You think it's that simple? You think I've never been afraid? But true faith, Michael, isn't the absence of fear. It's walking in spite of it." The young man looked away, biting his lip, his father's words echoing within him more than he cared to admit. Angela intervened, tears in her eyes. "Elias, for God's sake, tell us what to do. You've always been our leader, but now you seem so divided." Elias looked at her deeply. "Because I know any choice can be costly. If we stay, we could be attacked. If we run, we're assuming fear has already won." Collins leaned closer, his voice low but firm. "Carter, sometimes retreating isn't cowardice. It's strategy. Hale doesn't just want to scare you. He wants to prove you're fragile. But if you face him head-on now, unprepared, he'll win before the war even begins." Michael stepped forward, facing Collins. "And you show up here full of codes and secrets. How do we know you're not betraying us?" Collins held his gaze firmly. "Kid, if I wanted to betray you, you wouldn't be here to ask. I'm here because I know Elias is still the only thing that can stop Hale." Elias held up his hand, signaling silence. He looked at his daughter, still cradled in Angela's arms, humming softly as if to dispel her fear with innocence. A tear ran down Elias's face. "My family is my mission. If Hale thinks he can take that from me, he's mistaken." Outside, footsteps began to echo on the gravel, the sound of heavy boots synchronized. Elias clutched the Bible to his chest. "They're coming," he murmured. Angela began to tremble. "Elias, don't let them take us." He held her face firmly. "No one will touch you. As long as I draw breath, no one will." Michael stared at him, finally without sarcasm, only with the respect he had never admitted aloud. "So, Father, what do we do?" Elias took a deep breath, each word coming out like a sentence. We opened the door, but not with fear, with faith. Collins's eyes widened. Carter, this is suicide. Elias replied firmly, no, this is trust. If Hale wants to test me, he'll find me standing. He walked to the door, each step echoing like drums. Angela wept silently. Michael followed close behind, and Collins reluctantly readied his gun. Elias placed his hand on the doorknob, closed his eyes and whispered, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The silence was broken by a voice outside, loud and firm, calling his name, Elias Carter. The family's hearts froze. Elias took a deep breath, ready to open the door. Who calls his name? An enemy of Hale, or Hale himself in front of his house? The name echoed like thunder. Elias Carter. The family's hearts seemed to stop for a moment. Angela was clutching Grace to her chest. Michael kept his fists clenched, and Collins was already ready to react. Elias, motionless in front of the door, closed his eyes and murmured in prayer, Lord, be my strength. With a slow movement, he turned the knob and opened the door. Streetlight flooded the room, revealing a tall figure wrapped in a black overcoat, a wide-brimmed hat partially hiding his face. The tension was unbearable until the voice rang out again, closer now, filled with firmness and a strange respect. Don't be alarmed, Carter. I'm not Hale, but I bring a message from him. Angela gasped, backing away. Michael stepped forward, his voice trembling with anger. And what message does a coward have who doesn't have the courage to come here in person? The man lifted his face, revealing features marked by hardship, dark skin, cold eyes. The coward, boy, is the one who hides behind faith without being willing to prove it. Hale said Carter would have that chance soon. Elias stepped forward, staring at his visitor closely. If Hale has something to say, let him say it looking me in the eye. Tell him I won't bow down. The man let out a low, humorless laugh. He already knows you won't bow down. That's why he'll break everything around you until nothing is left standing. Collins stepped forward, discreetly pointing his gun down. Who are you? Name now. The man slowly raised his hands. You can call me Jonah. I was a soldier alongside you, but I chose to follow Hale when Carter betrayed him. Elias felt his blood run cold. Jonah, are you alive? The man nodded. And more alive than ever. Hale gave me a purpose you would never understand. Michael looked at his father, confused. Dad, did you know him? Elias replied, without taking his eyes off Jonah. I did, and I regret not stopping Hale from contaminating you. Jonah laughed sarcastically. Contaminate? No, Carter, he opened my eyes. While you hide behind verses, Hale acts. While you speak of faith, he builds power. Angela couldn't contain her indignation. Power without love is destruction. What Hale calls purpose is nothing but tyranny. Jonah turned to her, his gaze cold. And you, Mrs. Carter, will see for yourself. Hale isn't coming just for Elias. He's coming to tear out every root of this faith you pretend to have. Elias took a step closer, his deep voice echoing. Jonah, listen carefully. You're blind. Hale isn't the voice of God. He's the echo of hell itself. Jonah just smiled. If that's how you think, then accept the challenge. Hale has chosen the field. He's waiting for you tomorrow at sunrise, at the old warehouse south of town. If not, he'll come for you. The silence was crushing. Angela wept softly. Michael stared at his father. Collins gritted his teeth. Elias stood firm, even with his heart aflame. Tell Hale I'll be there. Jonah inclined his head, as if confirming a sentence, and retreated into the darkness. Before disappearing, he uttered his final words. Take your faith, Carter. You'll need it more than your guns. Then he vanished, leaving only the echo of his words in the air. Elias closed the door slowly, the weight of the decision falling on his shoulders. Angela grabbed his arm in despair. Elias, you can't go. It's a trap. Michael approached, his tone thick with emotion. Father, if you go, you'll be alone against him. What if you don't come back? Elias looked at his wife and son, tears shining in his eyes. If you don't come back, I want you to remember one thing. My faith doesn't end with me. It continues in you. Collins pressed his hand firmly on his shoulder. If you're going, Carter, you're not going alone. I'll be there. Elias nodded gratefully, but his voice was grave. Tomorrow, the past and the present will meet, and only God knows what will be left. Elias has accepted the challenge. Dawn will bring the confrontation with Hale. Who will survive the truth of this encounter? The old warehouse south of Atlanta stood like a forgotten scar on the city. Worn brick walls, broken windows, the smell of rust and oil permeated the air. The sun rose slowly, tinting the sky red, as if the morning itself sensed blood. Elias walked steadily to the entrance, Bible in hand, his heart beating like a war drum. Beside him, Collins adjusted his posture, his gun hidden under his coat, but his eyes ever watchful. Outside, Michael and Angela waited in the car, praying silently, while Grace remained at home under the care of trusted neighbors. Elias's every step seemed to echo his resolve. This was not just a fight against a man, but against the very ghosts that haunted him. Inside, in the center of the darkness, a figure awaited him. Marcus Hale, older, but still imposing, tall with weather-beaten skin, icy blue eyes that gleamed like steel in the light, filtering through the cracks. He wore a military overcoat, ancient medals pinned to his chest, and in his hands he held a distinctive Bible, bound in black leather, almost like a distorted symbol of faith. His voice echoed through the empty space, charged with authority and venom. "Carter, finally! I knew you couldn't resist." Elias stopped a few feet away, his voice deep and calm. "I didn't come for you, Hale. I came because I won't allow your lie to continue." Hale smiled, that cold smile that didn't touch his eyes. "A lie? I merely carry the banner you abandoned. I'm the voice of the country you disowned." Elias clutched the Bible to his chest. "You are no voice at all. You are only the echo of pride that destroys men." Hale stepped forward, lifting his black Bible. "While you knelt before an invisible God, I built armies. While you sought verses, I sought power. And now look, you stand here alone, because even your family doubts you." Elias took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the enemy. "My family is my strength, and God has never left me alone, not even now." Collins took a step forward, but Hale raised his hand, pointing at him. "Stay out of this, Sergeant. You're just a shadow in this story. This battle is between me and Carter." Elias raised his voice firmly. "No, this battle is between truth and lies, between the cross and arrogance." Hale laughed, echoing off the walls. "Then prove your truth, Carter. If your God is so powerful, may he save you now." Elias closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and opened his Bible at random. His eyes fell on Romans. "If God is for us, who can be against us?" Hale's eyes widened for a moment, but then his expression hardened. "Nice line, Carter, but words don't stop bullets." Slowly, Hale pulled a pistol from his overcoat, pointing it directly at Elias. Angela from the car shouted his name in the distance, but Elias stood firm, unmoving. "You don't understand, Hale," he said, his voice like thunder in the silence. "The faith that sustains me doesn't depend on guns. You can take my life, but you can't destroy what I carry." Hale pulled the trigger, but before the shot could be fired, Collins lunged, pushing Elias aside. The shot echoed, resounding like thunder inside the warehouse. The impact sent dust falling from the ceiling. Elias stood up, facing Hale, who still had his gun drawn. Collins, still alive, was aiming his back. But Elias held up his hand, stopping him. "No, Collins, this war isn't won that way." Hale laughed nervously. "You're still the same idealist, always believing you can win with words." Elias stepped forward, his voice now echoing with authority from within. "These aren't my words. This is the word of God, and before it even you will have to be silent." Hale trembled, his gaze flickering between hatred and fear. The sun streamed through the broken windows, illuminating Elias fully, as if the scene had been prepared by heaven itself. Michael, who had run from the car, entered the warehouse and saw his father standing firm, unarmed in the face of the threat. "Father!" he shouted. Elias turned for a moment and replied, Go back to your mother, son. Today, you will see that faith is stronger than any bullet." Silence stretched. Hale was breathing heavily, his fingers tense on the trigger, but his hand was shaking. "Why can't I?" he murmured. Elias took the last step forward, his eyes fixed on him. "Because evil cannot abide the light, Hale, and the light always wins." Hale faces the decisive moment. Will he shoot or yield to Elijah's faith? The silence inside the warehouse seemed eternal. Marcus Hale still pointed the gun, but his hand trembled, unable to complete the gesture. His cold, once impenetrable gaze now revealed cracks. Elias stood firm, the Bible against his chest, his eyes filled with conviction. "Shoot, Hale, if you believe the bullet is stronger than God's promise," he said in a deep voice, filled with faith. For seconds that felt like hours. Hale tried to resist, but the gun fell from his hand, echoing against the concrete floor. He staggered back, as if an invisible weight had fallen onto his shoulders. I can't, he murmured, his voice breaking. Collins approached cautiously, handcuffing Hale before he could regain his composure. Angela and Michael rushed inside, hugging Elias with tears of relief. Grace, brought by neighbors who had seen the movement, ran to her father, her small voice saying, "Daddy, I knew God would take care of you." Elias lifted her in his arms, tears flowing freely. Michael, his voice breaking, finally confessed, "Dad, I saw it. I saw faith win. Forgive me for doubting." Elias hugged him tightly, his eyes closed. "Faith isn't the absence of doubt, son. It's standing tall, even when it screams inside us." Outside, the sun was already shining brightly, gilding the city. The warehouse, which once seemed like a tomb of memories, now bore witness to a new beginning. Collins approached, touching Elias's shoulder. "You won, Carter. Not just Hale, but the demons you carried." Elias looked up at the sky, taking a deep breath. "It wasn't me, Collins. It was the one who was always with me, even when I thought I was alone." Angela squeezed his hand, her eyes teary but full of hope. "Now can we go home?" Elias smiled for the first time in a long time. "Yes, because home isn't just a place. Home is where God dwells." As the family left the store, the wind blew gently, as if creation itself was celebrating. Hale, handcuffed and head down, mumbled incoherent words, unable to face the light. Elias carried his Bible, now open to a page that seemed chosen by heaven. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" Psalm 27:1. The invisible camera of life pulled back, showing Elias, Angela, Michael, and Grace walking together in the light of the rising sun. No longer a family divided by fears, but as one, guided by the faith that endures.